Good morning. Happy Hanukkah and welcome to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is Jen Jaksa and I'm honored to be a member of the Standing Committee. Clearly, the biggest news to share from Community Matters is our return to red light protocols. I, for one, am so grateful to our minister, Reverend Lara, and to the amazing team of people that worked over the holiday weekend to assure we could pivot back to online services. So really amazing that we've done that and that we reacted so quickly to the red light protocols. So appreciate that. Also remember that next week's worship service, and RE will be virtual as well. Also, just wanted to extend a huge thank you to our members who helped to pack 500 gift bags for incarcerated people in local facilities. So with that, just a reminder of Giving Tuesday, this Tuesday, just 2 days away. So please consult your Community Matters for other opportunities to give back to our communities. So with that, I welcome you to church.
Good morning. I'm Molly Lozeau, the music director, and this is Natalie, my assistant music director, helping out this morning, and now she's hiding. I just wanted to introduce the Prelude. You'll see it's Rock of Ages, and from my research and reading about music that is sung and played during Hanukkah season, this one can be traditionally sung after you light the candles on the menorah. And it's actually hundreds of years old. The tune and then some subsequent words were written in the 1800s. So this is a very old traditional song. So you'll hear a piano rendition of it, set like a hymn with other harmonies.
We gather together today at the confluence of two wonderful traditions. We gather as Hanukkah is just beginning and our Jewish siblings celebrate the miracle of light in the form of oil lamps that lasted longer than they should have. We gather on the first Sunday of Advent and our Christian siblings celebrate the miracle of light in the form of a star that would guide people toward a baby and a saving path. Whatever miracles move you, whether supernatural or wholly natural, may you feel the light around you and within you. Let us worship. I'd like to invite Martha, when she's ready, to light our chalice and lead us in the words of our covenant.
Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you, Martha. I'd like to invite Bob to light the first candle of our Advent wreath, the candle of hope.
Is that good?
Yes. May the light of this first candle of Advent warm our hearts today and in the weeks to come. As the candles burn brighter and brighter, may we too send our light to all who come our way. These are the words of Jan Vickery Nost.
Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, I'd like to invite Roger Price, and I'm not sure if Andrea is there with you.
She's here.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, Andrea. To light the first candle in honor of Hanukkah starting at sundown today.
This is the shamus, and as soon as it gets lit, Andrea will light the first candle. Hold on. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu, b'mitzvosav b'tzivanu, lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehasa nisam lavotenu, ulimotenu, bayamim hahim, bazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh.
All right. Thank you, Roger and Andrea. So good morning. Good morning, one and all. And I join with Jen in welcoming you to First Church Unitarian in Littleton virtual style in our red light conditions. My name is Lara Hoke, and I'm so happy to be the minister of this incredible congregation, whether we're in person or virtual or a combination of the two. Always wonderful to be together. I can't tell if anyone is visiting with us for the first time, but if you are, we're really glad that you found our virtual service this morning. And I hope that you can maybe stay around for a little while after the service for fellowship if you wish to get to know us a little better. And if you're new with us, you can always visit our website, fculittle.org, and get more information. You can scroll down on the home page and look for the virtual pew card and fill that out if you want more information about us. Okay, so here we are. As you know, we are in a red light conditions, and I too want to thank the church leadership and all people on the staff and otherwise who worked to shift so quickly. And I'm really grateful for that. And next Sunday, you will have the gift of the preacher you know so well, our lead deacon, Cindy Malley. And that will be on Zoom as well. And then we'll see how we're doing. So just to let you know, our lay pastoral minister today is Phyllis Terry. So again, welcome. It is so good to see your faces. And now I'm going to turn it over to Molly to lead us in some joyful noise. We have a different condition this morning, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, so since we're all here and we're all on Zoom, I think we should all unmute and make as much joyful noise together as we can. I think we can clap. I think we can say hooray. I think we can say whatever. Yeah? All right, so let's everybody unmute. All right, let's get as loud as we can. 1, 2, 3. Hey!
See you.
We're all here. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
Just unmute again.
That there's pros and cons to everything. So there you go. Kind of fun to hear some voices. Let's see. Oh my goodness. And the other fun thing about being online is we have a time for all ages this morning. I know some of you have been really missing this. I've been missing it. I've been missing the story, and I've also missed that I get a little break during the time for all ages. And I have been missing that, I have to admit. So this morning we have an encore performance. Some of you might have seen last year, but it's worth seeing it a year later, believe me. And that is Cindy Malley telling us the story of the Latke who couldn't stop screaming. So if there are children anywhere near you, bring them up for this great story.
Hi. Today's story is one of my favorite holiday stories. It's a different sort of story, so I hope you like different sorts of stories too. I'll be reading The Latke Who Couldn't Stop Screaming, a Christmas story by Lemony Snicket. This story ends in someone's mouth, but it begins in a tiny village more or less covered in snow. The snow had fallen during the long night, during which children had pressed their faces to the windows, looking for a glimpse of a man who they suspected of bringing them wonderful gifts. But instead, they heard a terrible noise from a certain cottage in the neighboring arrondissement, a word which here means place where something was being born. This cottage was already regarded with some suspicion, as it was the only place not decorated with flashing colored lights at this time of year. The thing that was being born was a latke, a word which here means potato pancake. Latkes are a traditional part of the celebration of Hanukkah, a holiday commemorating a miraculous Jewish military victory. Nearly everything in this world is born screaming, and the latke was no exception, even though the latke wasn't conceived and born the way you and I were conceived and born, but instead was fashioned from grated potatoes, chopped onion, beaten eggs, and a dash or two of salt. Once these ingredients were properly mixed, the latke was slapped into a pan full of olive oil, heated to a very high temperature, and this is when it began to scream. Ah! Ah! The latke was suffering so much that it leapt out of the hot pan and out the window of the cottage and began to run, screaming down the boulevard. Ah! This may seem like unusual behavior for a potato pancake, but this is a Christmas story in which things tend to happen that would never occur in real life. The latke ran past a row of flashing colored lights which hung from the rain gutters of a less suspicious cottage. "What's all the ruckus?" said the lights in unison. "We're the ones who are supposed to be dominating the neighborhood with our cheerful glow." "I was just thrown into a pan of boiling oil," the latke cried in reply. "Can you believe it?" "Yes," said the flashing colored lights, "but we can't imagine why." "Because I'm a latke," said the latke. The olive oil reminds us of the oil used to rededicate the temple following the defeat of Antiochus at the hands of the Maccabees. The oil was only supposed to last for 1 night, but there was a miracle and it lasted for 8. Plus, frying makes my skin crispy and brown. So you're basically hash browns, said the flashing colored lights. Maybe you can be served alongside a Christmas ham. I'm not hash browns, cried the Latke. I'm something completely different. Ah! Ah! The Latke rounded the corner and found itself face to face with a candy cane, which wrinkled its red and white nose at the Latke in distaste. I'm trying to sprinkle the night air with my peppermint scent, the candy cane said. Your mouth-watering smell, not to mention all that yelping, is spoiling the effect. My mouth-watering smell is part of the cozy feeling of Hanukkah, the Latke replied. It reminds us that things are better now than they were in 175 BCE, when my people were not allowed to practice their religion. In order to study the Torah, they had to hide out in caves, and when they heard Greek soldiers approach, they pretended they were gambling with a small spinning top called a dreidel. Sort of like Joseph and Mary hiding out in the manger, said the candy cane. Someone should write a Christmas carol about you. I'm not part of Christmas, cried the Latke. It's a totally different thing. Ah! Ah! The screams of the Latke grew quieter and quieter as the pancake ran out of the village into the surrounding forest. Its utter fury was unabated, a phrase which here means the Latke was still very annoyed at the objects to whom it had spoken. But it was quite tired, and so it decided to rest for a few minutes beneath the branches of a little pine tree. The pine tree was napping, but woke up at the sound of an object plopping down at its feet. Are you a present? The pine tree asked. Presents are pretty much the only thing allowed to sit beneath me during this time of year. The Latke sighed. Presents aren't really a big part of Hanukkah, it said in a voice hoarse from screaming. There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to loved ones, of course, but it's more important to light the candles for 8 consecutive nights, to commemorate the miracle of the temple and the miracle of victory, even when you are thoroughly outnumbered, so you shouldn't give up hope. Plus Santa Claus, said the pine tree. The Latke was too exhausted to scream. Santa Claus has nothing to do with it, the Latke said. Christmas and Hanukkah are completely different things. But different things can often blend together, said the pine tree. Let me tell you a funny story about pagan rituals. But before the pine tree could begin its story, a family came trooping through the snow, searching the forest carefully. We shouldn't have waited until the last minute to get ready for the holiday, said the father in the family, who was holding an axe. We'll never find a good one. You shouldn't give up hope, said the mother, and pointed at the pine tree. Look! It's perfect, said the daughter. Beautiful, agreed the son. Such a marvelous shape, said the mother. And its skin looks so crispy, said the father, and reached down and scooped up the Latke from the snow. We'll need to reheat it, of course, but this will be perfect for Hanukkah dinner, with a topping of applesauce, sour cream, or even jam. I'll refry it in oil, said the mother, to remind us of the rededication of the temple. And the triumph of the Maccabees over Antiochus, added the daughter. After hiding in caves all that time, the son chimed in. The father smiled down at the Latke in his mitten, and then started curiously at his other hand. What was I thinking, bringing this axe? he said to himself. The family strolled back to the village, walked past all the cottages with flashing colored lights, and smiling politely at the candy canes until they reached their own home. The family carried the latke into their own home, which was warm and cozy, and sat down at the table, which was lit with the flickering candles of a menorah, or Hanukkah, which is a branched candelabra designed specifically for the holiday. It is very frustrating not to be understood in this world. If you say one thing and keep being told that you mean something else, it can make you want to scream. But somewhere in the world, there's a place for all of us, whether you are an electric form of decoration, peppermint-scented sweet, a source of timber, or a potato pancake. On a cold, snowy night, everyone and everything should be welcomed somewhere. And the latke was welcomed into a home full of people who understood what a latke is and how it fits into its particular holiday. And then they ate it.
All right. Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much again, Cindy, for recording that last year. How wonderful. Okay, so this is going to be our offering, our opportunity for generosity. And let's see, I think you can see this. No, it's this way. I always get confused. Here it is. I'm rusty. It's been a while. So we are, as you know, a self-supporting congregation, and we rely on the generosity of our members and friends. If you wish to either make an offering this morning or perhaps make a pledge payment, I encourage you to use this method this week. You can either mail it in through the postal system, or you could go to the website and look for the yellow donate button, and that will walk you through it if you would like to do that. If you are visiting or new with us this morning, please don't feel obligated to make any sort of gift offering, but instead consider this service as our gift to you. This morning's offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation.
All right, the music you're going to hear during the offertory today is I Have a Candle. And when I was looking for music to play for this service, I just did a general search on like traditional Hanukkah music, and this came up. It actually came up in a book of music. So I'm wondering, if how often these are sung, or if this is a collection. And that's something that, if you know the answer, I would love to know. This particular song translates into a singing translation as thus: I have a candle so bright, on Hanukkah my candle burns bright. On Hanukkah its light burns long, on Hanukkah I sing this song. On Hanukkah its light burns long, on Hanukkah I sing this song. So again, it sounds to me like a fun song that you could sing together with other people. And it's pretty short, but there you go. Here's the tune for I Have a Candle.
Here.
Thank you so much, Molly. Thank you for recording music for us for today at the very last minute, really. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So we are moving into our time for sharing joys and concerns. I'm calling it that rather than candles of caring because we won't really have candles this morning. I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to put yourself on the gallery view. And if you don't remember how to do that, you should have a box that says view. And when you click on that, a little menu comes down. You can pick speaker or gallery. And for this, I encourage you to pick gallery, I would say. And that way at the end, after everything has been shared and after we have our prayer and time for silence, when we go into Spirit of Life, then we can see each other and we can sign it together if you wish. So most weeks, as you know, we share a time to feel again our deep connections to one another and to that which we consider holy. And it's in that spirit that we share our joys and our concerns. If you or someone very close to you is experiencing a sorrow this morning or perhaps joy this morning, and you'd like to share that, I encourage you to raise your hand. And Mike, thank you so much, Mike, for helping us today, can call on you if you use the blue hands. Now, if you remember how to do this, for some of you, it will be in the reactions area of your Zoom. And for some of you, that blue hand will be found in the participants area of your Zoom. If you can raise that blue hand, and then we can call on you to share. And I think that's all you need to know. Okay.
And we'd love for you to share your video as well.
Yes, if you're willing to share your video, that would be wonderful. Okay. Are there any joys or concerns to share this morning?
Andy, please unmute.
I'd like to share a concern for my good friend, Mark McCullough, who's out in Oxnard, California. Back this past Wednesday, he had a near stroke event and had to spend Thanksgiving in the hospital, but he's better now. Hopefully he's recovering. We go back way back when we were back in the military together, and I miss him very much. He was my best friend in the Army. He is my best friend in the Army, and if you could send healing thoughts and prayers to him, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Will do, Andy. Thank you.
Kate, would you unmute?
Good morning, everyone. Our joy is that our family has moved into our first home here in Westford. We're super excited and so happy to be moved in. And I have a concern of deep sadness. Our community and my dear friend Karen passed away on Wednesday after a 3-year battle with a rare form of cancer, leaving her 7-year-old son, Leo, and her 5-year-old daughter, Margot. She was an amazing human with an unmatched wit, and I'm praying for her peaceful transition. She will be sorely missed.
Okay.
Joel and Pam?
Well, we're lighting this virtual candle for Pam's brother, Brad, who had a positive COVID test. Home test, but has been since retested, is not feeling terribly ill, but his wife, who had a negative COVID test, is now running a fever. Pam and I are waiting for our COVID test results because although we both feel fine, we were fairly close to Brad last Saturday, a week ago, Saturday. So we are very much expecting to find out that we are not COVID positive. If we are, it's going to really, really mess up plans we have to fly to California next weekend. So that's our candle.
Thank you.
Karen?
Yes, hi everyone. This is Jim Arasano. This is a candle of great joy. Vanessa gave birth to Joseph Arthur Owen IV on Wednesday at 9:15 p.m. And Joe and Vanessa came home yesterday. Everyone's doing well, and he's a great little guy, and we're very, very excited. So, yippee.
Cute.
Good morning. This is a candle for my mom, Anita Vartanian. She's in the care of the hospice nurses right now at the nursing home down in Providence. So just wishing her a peaceful transition. They're pretty good at managing all of that, but it's no fun. Thank you.
Andrea, unmute, please. I know you're not muted, but we don't hear you anyways.
Yeah, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, something's wrong with your mic. Sorry. If you want to type in a chat, then we'll read it for you into the Zoom. Cynthia, you want to unmute?
Thank you. This is a candle of concern and hope and positivity for my friend Linda, who's having open heart surgery tomorrow. She's very strong, and I'm sure she'll be fine, but it's just a very scary time. Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy.
Molly.
All right.
Please say it with me.
You can say it. So Natalie realized that she hasn't been able to be a part of the service at all this fall, and so she wanted to share something that we did over the summer. You gonna say what we did over the summer? Go ahead.
We went to Indiana.
We went to Indiana and we visited grandma and grandpa and lots of uncles and aunts, and she had a great time and she wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you. Reverend Lara.
So first, concern, thinking of Doug and wishing him speedy recovery. Sounds like he's doing well, which is great. But wishing speedy recovery for him and hoping that Dara and Ellie stay nice and negative and well. And a joy, which is that my mother, Nathalie, turns 80 this coming week. And I'm just, wow, what a great milestone. So yay, Mom. Woohoo!
All right, I have allowed all to unmute in case there's someone who's having trouble raising a hand and would like to speak. Please unmute, and we'll sort out who wants to go first. Is there anyone else who needed to speak or wanted to speak?
I guess I'll just say that today is just, I just feel normal. I mean, there's just no other description for it. As a matter of fact, I plan on maybe going out to CVS and seeing if I can get one of these tests to alleviate some of the tension that remains in the home, as we say, because there is a bit of concern about these sorts of things. But, my case was mild enough that if my chills hadn't repeated on Tuesday, I wouldn't even have gone for the test. So sometimes you can be fortunate enough that your immune system is well educated and just kicks it to the curb like it's nothing. And I'm lucky and very fortunate that that was the case for me.
Doug, I celebrate that you just came clean and told us your identity. Thank you. And call ahead at CVS because they're in short supply. So this is Susan Tordella Williams. My candle of caring is for a good friend who Cindy and the Cenas know in prison named Josh. He was illegally incarcerated for 7 years. got his case thrown out by a judge, yet the district attorney has decided to retry him this week. So I'm just hoping justice will be served for this man who's completely different than he was when he went to prison 3 times in his 20s. He's now about 40. So please send your energies for Josh.
Susan.
David, did you care to speak? You're off mute.
I was just going to ask you if we heard from Lorinda.
I'm sorry?
I was just asking if we heard from Lorinda, who was trying to speak before.
I don't see anything in the chat,
Okay,
but thank you for reminding me. You can also email me. Remember, we're going to do announcements and stuff after the service.
Yeah.
Michael, which Michael is that?
Question.
Question. Hi, Michael. You want to unmute for me?
Hello, everyone. This is a message for Natalie.
I'm guessing it's Molly's Natalie, not Lara's Natalie.
You never know. All right, any other joys or concerns to share this morning? Okay. Then please join with me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we have come together in love and trust, sharing those cares dearest to us with this virtually gathered beloved community. May we hold all the joys, concerns, and sorrows, both spoken and unspoken, as we share together a time of sacred silence. Amen, and blessed be. If you've heard any of my previous Hanukkah sermons, you've heard me say that Hanukkah is considered a fairly minor Jewish holiday. It's a minor holiday in part because it's the only Jewish holiday that is not mandated in the Hebrew Bible. The story of Hanukkah can be found in the non-canonical book of Maccabees, which was written in Greek rather than Hebrew, and it's discussed relatively briefly by the rabbis in the Talmud, and that's it. It's nowhere to be found in the official Hebrew Bible. That is to say, it's apocryphal. Most of us Gentiles, myself included, if we were asked what the miracle celebrated at Hanukkah is, we would probably say something about the temple oil lasting for 8 nights, even though there was only enough for 1 night. The menorah itself certainly provides a beautiful visual reminder of this part of the story. But many learned rabbis and other learned Jews will point out that the real miracle of Hanukkah is the underdog victory of the Maccabees fighting against the occupying Syrian Greeks. The miracle of the oil, many learned people would say, was more or less a fairy tale tacked onto the story of the Maccabee victory by the rabbis who compiled the Talmud. But a few years ago, I read an article that made me think of an angle I hadn't thought of before. The article was written by Rabbi James Ponnet, former professor and Jewish chaplain at Yale University. Rabbi Ponnet points out that the warfare in the book of Maccabees is less about the Maccabees versus the Syrian Greek troops, and instead, he says, actually more of a civil war among the Jews. He points out it was a civil war between the Maccabees and their supporters who wanted all Jews to fulfill the laws and commandments of the Torah versus the Jews who had largely become Hellenized and were no longer following all the Jewish traditions. Ponnet writes, so the miracle of the oil celebration of Hanukkah that the rabbis later invented covers up a blood-soaked struggle that pitted Jew against Jew. But really, who can blame them, he says. After all, what nation creates a living monument to a civil war? Recently, I've been thinking about this Hanukkah story and its complexities and wondering how we can consider it in a modern context, and especially, who would we be in the story if you set it in something like a modern setting? The Reverend Dr. Lynn Unger, Minister for Lifespan Learning with the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship, also urges us to think about where we would stand in the Hanukkah story. Surely, she writes, if there's anything that Unitarian Universalists can get behind, it's celebrations of people attaining the right to freedom of religion, of the struggle to be true to your own beliefs, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable opposition. And she asks, do you at this point in your life most resemble the Jews fighting for their religious freedom, or might you be part of the occupying force? Do you live as an occupier or as occupied, as resistance fighter or standing army, or maybe some of each? Now, I don't want to see myself as a Syrian Greek occupier, and I doubt that you want to see yourself that way either. Fighting for religious freedom sounds good. It sounds like something I'd want to be a part of, the resistance. Sounds romantic and noble. But of course, it was a bloody war. So for those of us with pacifistic leanings, that's a problem. So I don't want to be an occupier in the story. And though it's easy to admire the courage and conviction of the Maccabees, I've always said that I would only be part of a peaceful revolution, not a violent one. What about the Hellenized Jews in the Hanukkah story? Would we be Hellenized Jews? Now, they've been presented in a very negative way in the book of Maccabees. They are referred to as, quote, some evildoers in Israel. They are presented as evil because they've allowed themselves to assimilate into the culture of the occupying force, or Greek culture. They've let go of some of their Jewish traditions in order to live with more ease and comfort. playing by the rules of the Syrian Greek oppressors. That doesn't sound appealing in the sense that it's presented as making them somehow weak of will. Of course, it's hard to be a 21st century American trying to place oneself in a 2nd century BC story set in Judea. But I still think it's interesting to try. As Unitarian Universalist minister Tom Shade writes, Hanukkah is a story that reveals real contemporary fault lines in culture. It's a story that also reads us as we read it. Who are we in this story? How have we acted in regards to other cultures and religions? Now, before we dismiss the occupying forces in the Hanukkah story immediately as the obvious bad guys, I have to step back for a minute. Rabbi Leo Trepp points out some of the complexities to this aspect of the story. Trepp notes that the Jews derived cultural benefit from Hellenism and Greek culture. Before Antiochus IV came to power in Judea, they had been under a fairly benevolent rule of Alexander the Great, who was, as Trepp puts it, high-minded and cultured. Trepp points out that when Alexander the Great passed through Palestine and Jerusalem on his expeditions, quote, so gracious was he to the Jews that many named their sons after him. For that matter, ironically, if it weren't for Greek culture and language, there would be no Book of Maccabees, and there would be no Hanukkah. As Rabbi Ponent points out, the Jews were transformed by Greek culture, even as many of them resisted it. Later, under Antiochus IV, things became pretty horrible for the Jews. Antiochus IV rammed Hellenization down their throats, Trepp notes. The Jewish temple was defiled with Greek gods. The story of the Torah was prohibited. Sabbath observance became a crime. Circumcision was forbidden. And as Trepp points out, disobedience was punishable by death. Judaism was in grave danger of extinction. So if you think about who you would be in the story of the Jews in the times of Alexander the Great, 4th century BC, the occupying force is basically benevolent at that time. Jews are allowed to be Jews. Their religious practices are allowed. And some elements of Greek culture are quite wonderful. Even in the 21st century, we owe them a cultural debt of gratitude in many ways. If you were a Jew in Judea during this time, would you have fought the Greek rule and the creeping Hellenization? Or would you have thought it wasn't worth it if, after all, your religion was still intact and other conditions were decent? Would that be enough? Or would you fight for home rule? It's not such an easy or obvious question to answer. Under Antiochus IV in the 2nd century BC, the time of the Hanukkah events, the picture is different. There would be many reasons to fight the occupiers, to resist the empire of that time, because by this time, if you were a Jew, your people were suffering. The only obvious reason not to want to identify with the Maccabees in the story at this point is if you're a pacifist or a near pacifist. Is violent revolution ever worth it? If so, when? But Rabbi Ponet's article reminded me of yet another complication. Namely, while there were religious Jews who were loyal to the Torah and for whom Judaism was definitely worth fighting and dying for, there were other Jews for whom perhaps Judaism was less important. Yes, they are demonized as evildoers in the book of Maccabees, just as almost all non-believers are demonized throughout the Bible. But here we are, from the point of view of many people of faith today on earth, those of us in this Zoom room could be considered as non-believers. Sure, we believe in something, but for some, we don't believe in the right thing, or at least not enough of it. Some of us in this congregation do have Jewish heritage ourselves. And either we or our parents or our grandparents stopped being religiously Jewish at some point. And many of us are come-outers of other varieties. That is to say, we came out of some other religious tradition to become a Unitarian Universalist. My point is, the Maccabees are fighting for freedom of religion, an impulse that's easy for us to appreciate and applaud. But what about the more Hellenized Jews who left some or maybe even most of their religion behind? Religious freedom in its fullest sense also includes the freedom to leave your own religion or to have no religion at all. Shouldn't Unitarian Universalists appreciate this about as much as anyone? When I think about the Hanukkah story like this, I don't want to demonize the Hellenized Jews. The Maccabees might have risked death to save Judaism, but the Hellenized Jews, as Rabbi Ponnet pointed, had fallen madly in love with the sophisticated Greek globalizing superculture of their day. In any case, the Hellenized Jews suffered too, because as Ponnet points out, after the Maccabee victory, traditional Jewish observance was imposed on them at sword edge. One thing that gives me pause in considering my place in this part of the Hanukkah story and helps me to sympathize again with the Maccabees is the possibility of extinction. In this case, Judaism was in danger of being assimilated out of existence. And that, for so many reasons, would have been tragic. It makes me profoundly sad to think about extinction in all of its forms. When a species of animal becomes extinct, that strikes me as tragic. Likewise, the thought of a religion becoming extinct. Then there's the worst form of extinction at all, which is genocide. But again, what price are we willing to pay to stop these things? Would you fight to the death to save an animal from extinction? Probably not. Would you fight to the death to preserve a language, a culture, a religion? Would it be just your own language, culture, or religion, or would you fight for anyone's? And what about genocide? World War II is the one war that even pacifist-leaning people have trouble critiquing all out because of the Holocaust. How can you ignore that? But then again, what about Rwanda in the 1990s? Why didn't the United States and other powerful countries fight the genocide in Rwanda? This is part of the reason it's so hard to place ourselves in the Hanukkah story. Every historical situation is complex. What we know with hindsight is different from what we know in the moment. And the ethics of war is never straightforward or easy. The other thing is, it's easy to take the side against assimilation in theory, but in reality, it's so hard to resist. If you come to this country as an immigrant, or when your immediate family or ancestors came here as immigrants, assimilation was pretty hard to avoid if you wanted to survive. It's easier when you come here if you adopt US attitudes and behaviors, including learning English. To the extent that a new immigrant or a long ago immigrant to the United States fits in or assimilates, life in many ways goes more easily. Of course, it might not be good for one's spirits or mental health. It depends on what feels right to a particular individual. But outwardly, it will be easier to jump into the, quote, melting pot of US culture that we used to celebrate. But the melting pot concept has been a tool of empire and white supremacy culture in this country, easing languages, religions, cultures, even ethnic groups into near extinction in the name of manifest destiny for the privileged landowners. The melting pot concept has at least been the path of least resistance for the less privileged. In more modern times, Unitarian Universalists and other progressives have recognized the virtues of multiculturalism, allowing us to celebrate and embrace diverse traditions while still being one nation. Just as during the time of the Hanukkah events, as Ponnet puts it, Jews somehow became Greek without ceasing to be Jews. It's complicated. It's always complicated. And the Hanukkah story is complicated. May we continue to consider life's nuances and complexities as we consider our place in the Hanukkah story and our place in this society. May we consider how we might stop our occupying ways and how we might continue to work for the right to be different, as well as the right to conform, if that's what one freely chooses. As Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt writes, let us remember our duty to seek freedom for all because we remember oppression. Let us dedicate ourselves to Tikkun Olam, the healing of the world, as the temple sanctuary was once rededicated at this season. Let us carry light into the world in this season of darkness, she writes. May it be so, and may it be a happy Hanukkah. Blessed be, and amen.
We're now going to hear a piece that's originally written for choir and piano. I believe Artemis Singer sang it a couple years ago, actually. It's called A Hanukkah Remembrance, and you're going to see some of the lyrics of the song scroll at the bottom of the screen, so you can hear a little bit of what the singers would be singing as this is being played. It's not based on any sort of traditional melody. It is in minor, which it seems like a lot of Hanukkah songs are in minor, so you'll hear that. And the composer, Victor C. Johnson, is from Texas, and he's done a lot of choral composing, and he currently works at a Baptist church. So I hope you enjoy this song, A Hanukkah Remembrance.
Thank you, Molly. It's beautiful. I would like to invite you, if you haven't done so, again, to go to view and put yourself into gallery view so you can see the screens and the faces of anyone who is allowing their video to be seen for our closing words. And if you wish, I invite you to put the hands toward the sides of your screen and sort of touch hands virtually here and feel that energy between us. Friends, it is a complex world that we live in. There are so many nuances to the decisions we make. May we be gentle with ourselves and each other as we use our conscience to navigate the complexities and make the best decisions we can in real time without having that benefit of hindsight. May we always stand up for the rights of others to be free. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Our postlude today is "Thank You for the Miracles," and I'll read a little bit of the translation. We give thanks to you for all the miracles, for all the times you saved us, and for the victories and for the battles you waged for our ancestors in those days, during this season. In the days that have gone, we thank you for the miracles.